all know that food fuels us. It sustains us. And in today's competition, it unites us. But we're not here to talk to you today about food. We're here to talk to you about food waste. And the fact that every year in the US, we throw away nearly 1/3 of our food, which amounts to over $160 billion worth of lost value. Not only is this accelerating climate change, but it's also wasting precious natural resources. In a country with roughly 320 million people, some 50 million struggle to put food on the table. What's remarkable about this is that there's no single culprit. Frankly, food is wasted at every link in the food supply chain. We're all guilty of it, and we all have a stake in it. We're not here to point any fingers, but rather to illustrate the fact that it's very important we find alternative uses for food before it goes to the landfill. My name is Emily Molina. This is my partner, Ricky Ashenfelter. We're two MBAs from MIT, united by a passion for environmental sustainability and waste reduction. We're excited to present to you Spoiler Alert, our market solution for keeping food out of the landfill and helping businesses capture financial value. We'll begin by sharing with you why current food recovery solutions leave major room for improvement. We'll then present to you our vision for Spoiler Alert and explain how it can eat away at our food waste problem by deep diving into our value proposition and execution strategy. We'll then share with you our team, what we bring to the table, and how we can turn this into a multi-million-dollar business. Now, there are absolutely pockets of progress in this area today. Individuals and organizations that are doing their part to keep food out of the landfill and close loops within the system. However, many of these efforts are limited in scope, manual, and not scalable. Limited by out-of-date communication methods or status quo relationships, they miss the opportunity to maximize their impact, create value, and save money. How do we know that there are inadequacies in this system today? Well, each year in the US, $50 billion of losses are found at the retail level. We believe there's a technology opportunity to recover some of this value and food, and that is exactly where Spoiler Alert comes into play.
So Spoiler Alert will be an enterprise-wide integrated solution and software as a service. It'll be both mobile and web type applications and platforms that enable businesses and organizations to do something productive with food that would otherwise go wasted. What we're talking about is a B2B technology that links every part of the food supply chain. It's meant to allow market dynamics and real-time supply and demand information find the best optimal use for that food at the time, at the most optimal price point. Spoiler Alert is not meant to compete and will not compete with existing efforts to feed the hungry or help companies do something productive with food. It's meant to take this status quo business model and fit neatly within it, complementing existing processes with an added level of efficiency, speed, and value optimization. The platform will be founded on creating a marketplace that features routing functionality to help drivers and haulers and food owners get the food from point A to point B. And once it's built beyond just the initial app to a fully integrated enterprise solution, it'll offer the transaction processing that complements existing procurement, waste management, and accounting processes. We've talked to people up and down this food supply chain, and we know these are the functionalities that they're demanding. But none of this is meant to add an added level of burden to what they're doing. It's really meant to fast track their existing efforts. So Spoiler Alert takes its inspiration from a lot of existing business models and companies that are proven and that have been able to disrupt their own industries. And we're drawing our inspiration from the likes of eBay, Uber, and PayPal and their ability to offer and deliver services and goods in real time but with a smooth, efficient user experience. We're confident that the same type of business model can be applied to food recovery and distribution. And how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to take an existing conversation and put it online. It's meant to help the likes of a grocery store post what they have available, and the likes of a food bank or other nonprofit to indicate that they're interested in it. The system will allow the two parties to confirm the exchange and use the tool to route the driver from the owner of the food to the user of it, and in the end, processing the transaction and taking care of all the documentation.
At its core, spoiler alert, will reduce the environmental impacts of food. By decreasing the volume and emissions found in landfills, as well as our dependence on fossil fuels, it'll put more and better options on the table, particularly for people in need, and improve the profitability of food organizations of all shapes and sizes. But what will drive the success of spoiler alert is the compelling value proposition we offer to our customer segments. Farmers and waste haulers will have access to new revenue streams and larger customer markets. Retailers will be able to more cost-effectively manage their waste and operations. And energy producers and nonprofits, such as food banks, will have greater access to the supply that drives and sustains their business. Once all of these groups and players are logged into spoiler alert, there's enormous potential for integration and collaboration all across the food supply chain. To that end, spoiler alert will also be a platform that encourages entrepreneurs, new businesses tied to food waste and waste reduction. But we recognize that we need focus in order to execute effectively. Our priority is to prove our concept in one single market in order to pave the way for our broader vision. With that in mind, we're beginning with grocery stores that have excess food and food banks and other nonprofits that can distribute that food to people in need. We plan to launch in the greater Boston area. Upcoming legislation limiting the amount of organic waste that can go into landfills later this year, combined with our geographic proximity, will allow us to validate our model right in our own backyard. This decision is also driven by the size of the market in Boston, as well as relationships we've already established with potential customers in the area. Our goal is to make an immediate impact on retailers, waste haulers, and nonprofits within our community. A key step for us will be validating our revenue model. We intend to have, spoiler alert, be self-sustaining business. As you can see, we're proposing a subscription model that is based on 4 key areas of value creation. For example, retailers that are a part of our test market will value the cost savings associated with labor efficiencies, as well as the tax benefits coming from food donations. Likewise, nonprofits, such as food banks, will enjoy cost savings related to having to spend less on food purchases. These figures you see here are illustrative based on our initial calculations for the value that we'll be driving through our services.
All right. So all this is getting at that what we want to do now is to start building our product. And we have the pieces in place and an executable plan for the next 12 to 18 months. And the first step is designing and developing our prototype. And we're securing the technical resources to develop and help our team design the mock-ups, wireframes, and prototype that we can then take out to a handful of potential customers that we've already started vetting this idea with. The hope is to integrate their feedback and understand really all the technical aspects and the clicks that are necessary to take us down a road that's most fruitful and useful for the customer and helping them to save money and time. With that feedback in hand, the goal is to bring a handful of beta testers on and work with them to get their networks integrated into our system, because the network effect and the more users will be a key driver of our expansion strategy. So we spent a lot of time talking about the app, and that will be the foundation for what Spoiler Alert is, but the goal is to grow this into an entire enterprise-wide integrated system for companies. And we think that in this format, it'll be able to scale across the country through product iterations, regional expansion, and bringing on board new in all the food segments that we mentioned earlier. The first part of that is that user experience, minimizing the number of clicks and saving time, and getting that as well integrated into their system as possible. We're then going to expand into more than just Boston, but other large cities in the New England area. These are progressive communities, and they have complementary food waste legislation that we find really attractive for testing our product. Once that's in place, the goal is to bring on as many other food segments as possible. We want to prove ourselves and get the product right with just the food bank to grocer or vice versa model first. There's no reason that this model can't expand to other players and find more interesting uses, different value props across the supply chain. Yes. So we've talked through our vision, and we know that we're the right team to execute upon it. Emily and I have really relevant expertise in both technology adoption across the government, as well as sustainable supply chain design for food and agriculture businesses. We also have a great set of advisors and mentors, from food executives and successful entrepreneurs in our key beachhead markets right in the Boston area, as well as a great set of mentors with technology and sustainability expertise that round us out. And at the heart of all that is where we're geographically located, which is the epicenter of technological innovation and entrepreneurship. And we've done a great job of immersing ourselves as much as possible into the MIT community, and are really eager and starting to get our feet wet with all the other technical expertise related to geospatial, logistical, and supply chain expertise that are really available right at our fingertips.
We know the problem of food waste is a complex one, and that our plan is ambitious, but we're not deterred by the challenges that lie ahead. We're a young company and believe that there is the market for food waste is ripe for innovation. We're eager to build on our recent momentum and are excited to take Spoiler Alert to market. Thank you so much for having us here today, and we're happy to take questions.
You talked about speaking with a number of people up and down the value chain. Can you summarize that and give us some sense for how hard it's going to be to get them to change the current way of doing?
Sure. It's been a really eye-opening experience, all the conversations we've had, and it started out thinking there's one solution for all of them, and we've learned that each segment is a little bit more complex, and it really comes down to creating a behavioral change or a tool that allows that behavioral change. And the importance of that is understanding who's actually going to use our product, because it's not just the person, the accounting office or procurement. It's going to be the driver, it's going to be the man or woman that's at the loading dock. So there's a lot of different players in it, and we spent a lot of time thinking about where to first target, and we think the relationships we have in Boston with on the grocer and the nonprofit world are really key for us. But having that validated, customer proposition right there, we think it'll allow us to test out that idea, understand, how difficult or what functionality would be necessary to make it more efficient, and then allow us to keep iterating over the next couple of years to make sure the tool is user-friendly as possible.
Compare the margin of profit for the current system versus for the same year. For instance, Whole Foods. What is their loss per year in terms of produce that goes to waste, and they don't get any return on that, versus the amount we want to save?
Sure. So most of those numbers aren't public. Many of the we wish they were. It'd be very helpful for us. But what we are excited about is the fact that these organizations, retailers, have the opportunity to capture up to 50% of the value of food that they're donating. So that's a key part of the value proposition that we're able to offer them. And as we mentioned in our presentation at a high level, one of the things we ultimately hope to incorporate in the platform is the ability for these retailers to track and document the donations that they're making so that we can make that a really seamless process, file it with the IRS, and then easily capture that value.
To build on that, we have some high-level details that's suggesting about $1 to $1.5 million in loss per store from this wasted food. And we think if we can capture just a portion of that, it's reasonable to charge something like $10, $20, $50,000 for that service. And we're not talking an app solution where you're in the mindset of $2 for an app. We want this to be looked at and the value to be treated directly like it's a full service solution, and priced at that type of point.
So the revenue model that you have, you're showing conservative estimate up to 32 million in 2020. Just looking at your financial projection, it seems like a lot of that's kind of contingent into some, assuming the supermarket premium. What makes you see such a big jump from 2019 to 2020? Is there something intentional that you're doing in the model at that point through operations that's allowing you to ramp significantly on that line item? Or
Yeah, well, it's getting to the point where we've integrated more than just the supermarkets at that point. It's when the network effect takes into effect, and it's this.
Have you stress tested those price points that you have?
We have. We've talked to some folks to see, what they might be willing. Since we're not a full product yet and they haven't tested it, they haven't put a hard number on it. But they fully said if we wanted to take 20% of the value that they were being saved, that's the right way to price it.
And then you mentioned legislation that's coming. It's always great to have catalysts like that, but how much of your revenue model do you see as contingent upon legislation versus kind of more of a market-based approach going forward? I mean, you think replicating in other marketplaces that may not have that as a catalyst to unlock additional revenue streams, is that going to impede the business model at all, or should it?
So something we're inspired by is the fact that we're seeing a trend where waste isn't necessarily seen as a cost, but an additional revenue stream. We're seeing it with cooking oil at restaurants and trying to tap into that for this market. Certainly legislation coming into play in Massachusetts later this year is a huge help to us in the market, and there's similar legislation in the region and other parts of the country, but we see this as an opportunity that will have real value in all parts of the country, legislation aside.
So I think to make things like this work, we need a critical mass of participants on there. And I'm wondering how, until you do, you don't actually, the value is much lower. And so I'm wondering if anything about what you've described here kind of helps build that critical mass first, and then you adjust the model later.
I think the enterprise integration is a key part of that. With the big national retailers that we've talked to want a solution that doesn't require them to change too much of what they're doing today that complements that. So the goal is to build the initial product, get a sense of what functionality and what systems are out there that would need to be integrated with. And once you can immerse yourself in that, we think we can scale it, get a couple of national retailers on board, and grow with their platform.
So just to play devil's advocate a little bit here, there's another group of students at MIT hard at work on coming up with scalable waste-to-energy strategies, which could be installed at any level, in any store, restaurant, home. And so they eventually solve this problem in the next 5 years. And your waste stream is currently going to NGOs and donation groups suddenly become non-economic because the store can now get more money for the energy they generate by giving it to the waste-to-energy strategy than they can by letting it go down the road. Are you aware of any programs like that that might interrupt this wonderful business plan of yours?
Well, I mean, there's certainly different industry segments, like find a composter that tries to create these online marketplaces to connect these different people. We see our tool as complementing that business. It's finding those waste energy providers and the people that have the waste, and to hopefully provide them with the information that makes businesses realize instead of donating it, maybe it's more cost effective to actually be paid to have it sent to a waste hall or a waste to energy. So the hope is to let these market dynamics, us facilitate that exchange and find the right source.
We've got plan A and plan B for the same place.
Yeah,
and for the restaurants, have for their cooking.
Right.
How many headcount you have in 2016 to run this business?
2016. So the headcount initially is going to be the technical resources to help build the product and iterate with our customers' needs. It's also our initial sales process is going to be a lot more hands-on, direct outreach and working with them to get their customers involved. So it's going to shift initially from sales force heavy and technical heavy.
How many people are you going to need to pay for it at the year end 2016 to get the top down revenue point to?
These are I'd say probably 2 or 3 technical users or technicians and 1 to 2 salespeople, in addition to us, if we can get the product developed with a grant to get us off the ground.
So you have the waste haulers in there, and I guess we could think of it as waste to energy, potentially, that's what they're doing, but what I'm seeing right now is that waste haulers, they do one thing or the other, right? Either like they're compost haulers and that's what they do, or they're, they don't necessarily react in an instant option type of way to things. So are you proposing that they would then start reacting to something like this, or not? That's question 1. Question 2 is, I think one of the biggest challenges around recovering food is in transportation, and I think from what I can tell, you're sort of assuming that's just going to work itself out by the people on either end, but I'm not sure that assumption is substantiated. So those are my 2 questions.
So I'll just address the transportation question a little bit more broadly. Our intention initially is not to put more trucks on the road. There are a lot of trucks out there, and we would like to enable the businesses that already exist to have a play at some of this food recovery. As you said, it's true, many of the waste management companies right now are either one or the other, but we are speaking to a number of the local players in Boston, that they are creating new products and services and creating a dichotomy in their business, and I think that will only increase with the legislation that's coming out, and more broadly as our attitudes towards waste change. I'm trying to remember if you could remind me what your first question was.
Well, one's around, food banks are not always reliable in picking stuff up. That's been a challenge that's why a lot of stores don't donate these days. Because at one point they tried to donate, and the pickup was not reliable, and it's not worth their time or effort. And so this model is still relying on the food bank to come pick it up at a particular time, and I'm a little suspect of that assumption, I guess, is what I'm saying. So I'm wondering if you looked into how that transport would work, or if it's just a base assumption as part of that.
So right now, our intention is to keep some parts of the system in place. So food bank picking up the food directly from the retailer, but enabling through geotagging the ability for the retailer to see when the food bank is coming, what that route is going to be, will ease the burden on the retailer, understand when that pickup is going to take place. Since I think that is a big part of that frustration.
It's just food banks or food pantries also?
We're focusing on food banks initially, based on the scale.
wouldn't it make sense then to set up a centralized facility in which all retail stores could bring their excess food to then get picked up by a series of NGOs and food banks and stuff like this, instead of having to wig-wag your way through the cities? I noticed New York wasn't on there, but probably for a good reason too, which we'll discuss later, since the organized crime of America controls solid waste. To centralize the deposition of someone's daily overage, and that includes restaurants too, by the way, not just retail stores, so that you'd have one place to go to rather than all of these other places to go to. Would that make sense in your mind?
It's a model we've definitely put a lot of thought into. We've seen some folks start to think about it, and it's definitely on our radar. That's a more infrastructure-heavy model, and we are still very early on and with not much funding. So the goal is that could change. The goal is to put something minimal out there in the form of a technology solution. See if that enables consumer change or organization change, and then figure out through that iteration what is necessary to make the big leap to network. It may be that the technology and a market is all that's needed, but we may find out very quickly that this hub system is the right way to go, in which case we'd love to discuss iterating.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
great.
Even though you can't
Some people have been doing it against
Let me know when you start.
So, thanks guys.